The village of San Elias lay nestled between two mountains, where life was quiet and predictable. Its narrow stone streets wound through clay brick homes with red-tiled roofs, and smoke curled lazily from chimneys each morning. The people of San Elias were poor, but they were proud. Farmers, shepherds, craftsmen, bound together by tradition, faith, and family. On that fateful morning, 7-year-old Daniel sat outside his small home, cross-legged in the dust, guiding a battered toy car over cracks in the path. The toy was missing one wheel, its paint chipped away long ago, but to Daniel it was a priceless treasure. His late father had given it to him before succumbing to illness a year earlier. Every scratch on that car carried meaning. Every time Daniel pushed it forward with a whispered vroom, he felt as if his father's spirit was still beside him. Inside their modest kitchen, Daniel's mother, Marisol, kneaded bread dough with strong, weathered hands. She glanced out the window, smiling at her son. "Don't wander too far, Danielito," she called. Daniel grinned, holding up the toy car. "I won't, Mama. I'm racing." It should have been just another ordinary day. But at 11:17 a.m., the earth itself betrayed them. A low groan rumbled through the valley, followed by a violent jolt that threw Daniel to the ground. Pots crashed inside the houses, glass shattered, dogs barked frantically. People stumbled into the streets as the ground roared, buckling beneath them like a living monster. Marisol screamed from inside, "Daniel!" She rushed toward the door, but before she reached it, the ceiling split open. Clay bricks and wooden beams rained down. She raised her arms to shield herself, but the weight of her home collapsed around her. Outside, Daniel clutched his toy car, screaming for his mother. He barely had time to move before the wall crumbled. A heavy beam struck beside him, and dust engulfed him in choking darkness. His tiny fingers gripped the car tighter as everything went black. When the tremors subsided minutes later, silence followed. Then came the cries. San Elias was gone. Where there had once been neat rows of homes, there were now mounds of broken stone and timber. Fires burned where stoves had tipped. Mothers screamed names into the rubble. Men clawed desperately with bare hands, pulling away rocks until their nails tore. Miles away, an army base received the call. The earthquake had leveled the village. Dozens, maybe hundreds, were trapped. Within minutes, a rescue unit rolled out. Trucks carrying ropes, stretchers, medical supplies, and shovels. At the front was Sergeant Miguel Rivera, a man hardened by 2 decades of disaster response. He had seen collapsed buildings, floods, wildfires, but each time the same thought gnawed at him. Somewhere under all that destruction, someone was still alive, waiting. "We move fast, we move smart," Rivera told his men as they sped down the road. "Remember, every cry we hear is someone's child." By late afternoon, they reached San Elias. The soldiers froze at the sight. Entire blocks were flattened. Families sat in shock, covered in dust, eyes glassy with grief. The air was thick with smoke and sorrow. Rivera gave the order. "Teams of 5, start digging. Don't stop." The soldiers scattered, working with feverish urgency. They pulled out survivors. An elderly woman coughing beneath a collapsed archway. A baby still miraculously alive in its cradle. A young man with broken ribs who kept whispering the names of his parents. Each life saved lit a small flame of hope. But for every flame, there was darkness. Bodies were carried out too, wrapped in blankets, laid in a growing row at the edge of the square. Hours dragged on. The sun dipped, the temperature dropped. But the soldiers didn't stop. Their hands bled, their muscles trembled, their faces were streaked with sweat and dust. Still they dug. Just as despair began to set in, a faint sound broke the silence. It was small, fragile. A whimper. Rivera froze. "Quiet," he barked. The soldiers stilled, listening. For a moment, nothing. Then again, a child's weak cry, muffled under the rubble. "Over here," Rivera shouted. "Dig here." The men swarmed the spot, their exhaustion forgotten. They clawed at the debris with their bare hands, moving stone after stone, creating a narrow opening. A flashlight beam pierced the darkness. Their wedged between fallen beams and bricks, was a small boy. His face was covered in dust, his body trembling, but his eyes were open. In his arms, pressed tightly against his chest, he clutched a broken toy car. "Hold on, son. We've got you." A soldier called. Daniel blinked at the light. His lips trembled as he whispered, "Did you save my mom too?" The soldiers froze. The question hit them like a knife. Rivera swallowed hard, forcing strength into his voice. "We'll find her, but first we need you safe." Carefully, inch by inch, they widened the gap. The rubble was unstable. One wrong move could bury the boy deeper. Sweat poured from their brows as they worked through the night. Villagers gathered with candles, praying aloud, holding one another as the soldiers fought to free him. At last, close to midnight, Daniel was pulled free. Covered in dust, trembling, still clutching his toy, he was lifted into Rivera's arms. The crowd erupted, cheers, sobs, prayers. "Está vivo, he's alive." Daniel looked up at Rivera, his voice barely audible. "My mom?" Rivera pressed his lips together, forcing a nod. "We'll keep looking, Danielito, I promise." The boy closed his eyes, exhausted, and rested his head on the sergeant's shoulder. Back at the rubble, the soldiers dug through what remained of Daniel's home. Hours later, they found Marisol's body. She had not survived. Her hand was outstretched, as though reaching for her son one last time. Rivera stood in silence, the weight of grief pressing heavy on his chest. He looked at the boy, sleeping in a medical tent, still clutching that toy car. For the first time in years, Rivera felt tears burn his eyes. The rescue mission ended days later. Dozens were saved, many more lost. Daniel, with no surviving relatives, was placed in a shelter. But Rivera couldn't let go of the boy whose first words were about his mother. Weeks later, Rivera visited the shelter. He knelt in front of Daniel, who sat silently with his toy car. "Daniel," Rivera said gently, "how would you feel if I took you home? You'd have food, a bed, and a family." Daniel blinked, then slowly placed the toy car into Rivera's hand. "If I come, will you be my dad?" Rivera's throat tightened. He pulled the boy into his arms. "From today on, yes, I'll be your dad." Years passed. Daniel grew strong, his toy car always resting on his desk as a reminder of both loss and survival. Rivera raised him with discipline and love, teaching him resilience, courage, and compassion. At 17, Daniel stood before Rivera in uniform, announcing he wanted to join the army. "I want to save lives," he said. "The way you saved mine." Rivera hesitated, fear flickering in his heart. But then he saw the fire in Daniel's eyes, the same determination that had kept him alive under the rubble. He smiled softly. "Then be the best soldier there is." Years later, during another disaster, Daniel, now a decorated rescue officer, stood at the site of a collapsed building. As his team prepared to dig, he heard it again. A faint cry. "Over here." He shouted, his voice steady and commanding. He dropped to his knees, clawing at the rubble with his bare hands, his mind flashing back to the boy he once was. When his team asked what drove him so fiercely, Daniel pulled from his pocket the same battered toy car. "This," he said quietly, holding it up. "Because once someone never stopped digging for me." And so, the boy in the rubble had grown into the man who saved others from the rubble. The legacy of kindness had come full circle.